Thank you very much for having me here, and I'm proud to represent the Syrian Center of Policy Research in our long cooperation with Security and Context. And I think we have many shared issues, themes, and methodologies to talk about that we conducted during the last 11 years. We are an independent research center that started in Syria, and we worked on the transformative participatory approach to understand the dynamic of the conflict and to understand also how the pathway can be a challenge for both for the mainstream dominant narrative and methodologies and for our very, complicated conditions in the region. And today I just want to highlight 2 or 3 major points. The first one is about the region, about specific issues that we can need a lot of research to understand about this transformation that we have in the Middle East, and also as we have a cooperation on the measurement of insecurity, so how we can have a systematic assessment of insecurity in the region and beyond. So what is the methodology, what we have to concentrate on, what is the framework for that, and this is still work in progress, so we are happy to hear also from you about the methodology and about how we implemented this in the near future. And also the last point, I want to highlight some comments on the concept of conflict economy or war economy, which is highlighted yesterday. So if I start from the last point, that during the conflict in Syria, we believe that it's very important not to look for war economy and conflict economy just from the militarism point of view or from the security point of view. These externalities of the conflict-centered institutions, it's very important to see it not just for the investment in the militarization, the importance of this indirect effect on the whole of the economy. Actually, we see, for instance, in the conflict-affected country like Syria, like the whole country is a conflict economy, even if you are reducing in an ordinary productive sector, because you are allowed to produce agricultural products, and in the other region you are not allowed because of the conflict-centered institutions. So it's not just about how much you reallocate resources toward military or security. It is how to use policies to give incentives and disincentives to the sectors, people, communities based on your conflict-centered institutions. So actually, if you are allowed to work in a formal sector, in a productive sector, you are part of the conflict economy. If you are supporting humanitarian aid in a very professional way, you are part of this conflict economy because you are allowed to give the aid to this region, not to that region. So it's very important to see the conflict economy from this point of view, to see how the conflict-centered institutions use the economy, if it's productive or illicit, in a way to survive and the continuation and surviving of the conflict-centered institutions. And of course, the goal is not the conflict itself for the conflict power or elite. The goal is to hold the power for a long time, and what we called it, the plan of submission. How to convince the actor in the economy and in the society that this power will not change and this control is forever. The industry of submission, I think it's have been transformed in the region, and I will shift toward the region a bit in a minute, which make everybody believe that okay, we are unfortunate. This is a black hole. We don't have a hope for the future. But I think we have an evidence otherwise to talk it from the society point of view that we see it in many areas in the region. Now, also in the conflict economy, we have the future, the steel of the future. How you can destroy part of the economy and reallocate the opportunities that you have it there to a different elite. So you are transforming the wealth and the future opportunities as well. So it's not just about injustice, about what's happening now and for the previous generations. It is how they reshape the future by the policies, legislations, and intervene in the promising opportunities for specific actors. Also, I think we are this is under-researched in terms of how the wealth and the future opportunities have been transformed toward not just internal actors, as you know, that this external actors. I think yesterday Matthew also mentioned the human capital. I think the destruction of the social relations, in addition to the people capabilities, is part of this transforming process that need to be addressed. My point is that conflict economy is not just following the outcome of the militarization, it's beyond that, to look how the structure changed and transformed. The second point that I want to highlight is about the region. I think this is the loss of hope in the region after the Arab Spring is very important to see and to analyze as part of the insecurity now and in the future. And what I just want to highlight is 3 points. The first one is the many colonial approach or strategies. That we have, the start of that, we had Israel before, that they behave as a colonial power in the region, that they can do anything without accountability. But now we have many key actors. Now we have Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia. So we have many actors who want to fill the gap that they can see with the support of the global actors, that we have the rising of China and Russia, and of course the role of the US, which changed in the last 2 decades. So what we have it now, that we have more documentation, we have more communication, which we thought it will help us to reduce violations. Now we have a documentation for grave violations, and we have more violations. So it is to accept, normalized with this low conditions and threshold that we conducted, or we see it in the region. So the point that these strategies of the key regional actor cannot give a chance for a democratic transformation or in-depth a change toward more inclusive development, or whatever we want to see as a justice, peace, and prosperity. And we think that what we can see from the strategy of Turkey, for instance, or Iran, or Saudi Arabia, that it is not something that we can overlook or we can transform on the short run. Although we have this angry people from Afghanistan to Morocco, we still have this kind of contradict and suffocation. So the more we have transformation, I would call it from oppression to tyranny, we have more angry people, more people that want to change without parties, without tools, without an active civil society. So the tools, the means for transformation is not there. So what we can expect from that is the conflict or migration. We can't expect a transformation without tools. So this is just to say that from political point of view, we can't invest in only one of the tools, while we have a transformation of the political power toward more tyranny compared to the previous behavior. The escape of the conflict was very important to see that you escape from Yemen, from Syria, from Lebanon, Iraq, and from Libya, you are accepting or normalizing with this new kind of regimes. So how we assess this, how we see the change in the future, I think this is a very important point in the region. The second point is the identity politics. So yes, there is an investment in identity politics. It's new in academia as a concept, like in the 50s and 60s, but it is a historical use of identity in the conflict. But the level that we use now in the region is unprecedented. We have a huge investment in identity politics without a belief in alternative options. So the social justice is not part of the narrative that we are looking for in the future. The democratic dream is not part of this because of all the misconduct of the democratic transformation or projects. So I think we have this kind of investment in identity politics, not just based on religion, also based on gender, based on the location and areas, based on the class. So we have several investment in the inequalities and in identity politics. And the last point is the conflict economy, or the inequalities that embedded in the style that we have. You can see now the policies that conducted by Sisi, for instance, or by the Gulf countries, or by, of course, the conflict-affected countries. It's extreme neoliberal. It's concentration of the wealth and power in a few spoiled elite compared to the traditional private sector, for instance. We have a worse situation compared to the previous one. And we told the people, as in the case of Egypt, that the reason of inequalities in 2010 will be continue, and we will expand it. So the policies that you don't like, we will repeat it, but on exponentially more higher level. So this is the problem, that we have the conflict-affected countries, which is mixed between the conflict and between the neoliberal policies, like in Syria. But even the countries which is stable, quote unquote, it will be affected by these kind of investment of the inequalities within an economic policies. Now, this is 3 pillars coming under the umbrella that we have the inequalities of global power that I mentioned first. The dependency of political power on the external support increased substantially. So the Syrian regime lived because of Russia now. This is not like 2010. The support of the American to northeast of Syria for non-state actor is vital. The same for Turkish support for opposition. The more you are depending on the external power, the more you are marginalize the society and reduce the importance of the social acceptance. And I think even with the authoritarian regimes in the 90s and 2000s, part of the policies was to increase subsidies, for instance, to have the minimum social acceptance. We have a reduction in this. We can mention many examples in the region, but I think this is very dangerous, which is depending on the external power more and more. Now, having this gloomy picture, we can see that even with all this submission, the social movement that started in 2018 in Sudan, Algeria, Iraq, and then in 2019 in Lebanon, referred to one thing, that this society still want the transformation. They don't submit it so far. So we think that this kind of phenomena is very important to build on, to see the dynamics, how this society don't feel that it's over. There is no hope of the transformation. I think this is need to be investment, and we call this reinvestment in society, how we, as scholars, researchers, reinvest in the dynamics of the society and how they can see the transformation apart from the simple liberal vision for the NGOs, which I think it's part of the conflict economy dynamics in countries like Syria. Now, my last thing to highlight is how to measure this, how to see the picture apart from the classical indicators that we read it in many data sets, and why this data set is not enough. And in this regard, I think it's very important, as all of you mentioned yesterday, that to look to this security context from different point of view, from comprehensive and understanding political, social, cultural, and economic, environmental aspects. I think we agreed about that. The issue is how to measure it. And first, we see most of us following the outcome of the insecurity. So we see the violations or the military expenditure or the abuse of resources or power. And we think that it's very important to look in a comprehensive way for what we call it, not just for passive rights, it's also for positive rights, to see for the foundation of these outcomes, the policies that led to these outcomes. So it's very important to measure the outcomes, but also to see the system, the actors, and the dynamics that led to this outcome. The third level, so outcome systems and also the factors that, which is the context, how the environmental, cultural, geographical factors affect the security/insecurity. So this, to measure this kind of dynamic, you can't do a secondary data collection, for instance, or to have an opinion poll. So this will be the surface of this phenomenon. How to understand these dynamics? We suggest the following: to do it in a participatory approach. First, to have it's an in-depth interviews with people who are engaged in the public sphere. It's not just an email with please fill this questionnaire in 15 minutes. It is an in-depth personal interviews with a diversified experts and key informants who reflect the diversity of each country in the region. Of course, we are including many elements, so it is a very long interviews. It's not a quick one. It's look for the legal legislations, for the outcomes, but also looking for the actors and how they interact and activate their policies within the society, how the society react for that. I will not go into details in terms of the topics. I think we can send you the draft and then we will see more comments on details on the indicators. Of course, the second part is after we have this engagement with the society community through the expert and key informants, it's very important to have the result communicated with part of this society, either online or in person, to have the dialogue again about the alternatives. So it's not that we take the indicators and we build our vision for overcome these indicators. So it's not a typical statistical method. It is more transformative approach that we are engaged to understand, to work together toward the exit. So I think this research needs a lot of resources in terms of the capacity that we want. So first we need to have maybe a pilot project in 1 or 2 countries, that also not taking the country as on the macro level, also to have this aggregation of these based on the key areas or key locations, key communities, to have it more in-depth understanding of each of those countries. So the complementary for this is the discourse analysis, is to analyze the social media, to analyze the secondary data. This will be a complementary, but this is the main tool that we are talking about. I will stop here and thank you very much.